Eleanor sat in her endocrinologist's office on a Tuesday morning in April. The folder in front of him was thick. 12 years living with type 2 diabetes, 12 years of metformin, 12 years of blood work that kept pointing in the wrong direction. He looked up and he said one sentence, "Eleanor, your blood sugar isn't responding to the metformin anymore. It's time to start insulin." Eleanor said no, not because she was afraid of needles, not because she didn't trust her doctor, because every senior in that waiting room knew what we're starting you on insulin actually meant. The narrowing, the shrinking calendar, the slow handover of your own life to the people managing your medications. And Eleanor wasn't ready to hand it over. Not yet. What kept her saying no was something her granddaughter had sent her 3 days earlier. A photograph of a yellow root pulled out of the ground behind a temple in northern China. "I'm Dr. William Lee, and what Eleanor's granddaughter sent her is something American medicine has known about for almost 40 years and refused to put on a prescription pad. Even though the research keeps confirming what village healers in China and India have been saying for 3,000 years, Eleanor's name is real. Her age, 71. Her city, Asheville, North Carolina. And her A1C result, that's the blood sugar average that measures your last 3 months. 90 days after that Tuesday morning is at the end of this video. But first, we have to talk about a yellow root and why your doctor, even if she wanted to, isn't allowed to recommend it as an alternative to the prescription she just wrote you. The photograph Eleanor's granddaughter sent her was taken in Shaanxi Province, northern China, about 400 miles inland from Beijing. Her granddaughter Madison, 26, graduate student in ethnobotany, was on a research trip studying plants used by traditional healers in mountain villages. And every village she visited had the same yellow root growing in the temple garden. The Mandarin name is Huanglian. It translates roughly to yellow connection or yellow link. The plant itself, Coptis chinensis, Chinese gold thread, it's a small, low-growing perennial. Looks unremarkable, like a weed you'd pull out of a flower bed. But when you cut the root open, it's bright yellow, almost neon, like someone dipped it in turmeric. That yellow is the medicine. It's a compound called berberine, found in about a dozen plants across the world. Coptis in China, Indian barberry in the Himalayas, Oregon grape in the American Pacific Northwest, even golden seal, which a lot of American herbalists already know about. But it was the Chinese who figured out what it does first. There's a text from around 200 AD called the Shenong Bencao Jing, the earliest written record of Chinese pharmacology. And in that text, there's an entry for Huanglian. The entry describes it being used for what the text calls sweet urine sickness. Sweet urine sickness? That's diabetes. Before there was insulin, before there was metformin, before there was a name for type 2 diabetes, snorts. Healers in northern China were watching their patients' urine attract ants, taste their patients' urine to confirm it was sweet. Yes, that was how they diagnosed it. And they were prescribing this yellow root for 2,000 years. And then in 1969, a group of researchers in India decided to find out if the village healers were actually onto something or if it was just folklore. What they found changed nothing, because nobody listened. And honestly, this is one of the reasons I wrote The Midnight Insulin Trap. Because what I'm about to explain, what berberine does between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock A, your endocrinologist will never bring up. Links in the description if you want it. The Indian researchers at a small university in northern India gave berberine to 23 patients with diabetes. 3 months later, they measured the patient's fasting blood sugar. It had dropped significantly, in some patients by more than 30%. The paper was published in 1969 in an Indian medical journal, and the Western medical world ignored it. Look, I'm not going to pretend I know exactly why. I wasn't there. I was a kid. But I can tell you what happened next because the timing is the part that matters. In 1972, 3 years after that Indian study, the FDA approved a new drug for diabetes. The drug was metformin. Within 10 years, metformin was the most prescribed diabetes medication in the world. And berberine, the yellow root the Indian researchers had just proven worked, disappeared from Western medical journals for almost 30 years. Actually, let me back up. That's not exactly accurate. It didn't disappear. The papers existed. Anyone could read them. They were sitting in libraries and databases. They just weren't taught. Medical schools in America didn't put berberine in the curriculum. Endocrinologists never heard the word. Pharmacology textbooks skipped it. And so when your doctor, who probably went to a very good medical school, sat down at her desk in 1995, 2005, 2015, even 2023, and looked at your A1C and decided you needed something stronger than what you were taking, she reached for the prescription pad. Because that's what she was trained to do. She wasn't withholding anything from you. She wasn't hiding the truth. She just didn't know, which is its own kind of problem, because in 2008, that finally changed. In 2008, a study was published in the journal Metabolism, a Western journal peer-reviewed, not folklore, not anecdote, a randomized clinical trial. The researchers took 36 adults with newly diagnosed type 2 diabetes, none of them on medication yet. They split them into two groups. Group 1 was given metformin 500 milligrams 3 times a day, standard starting dose. Group 2 was given berberine 500 milligrams 3 times a day, same dose schedule. 3 months later, they measured A1C. The metformin group dropped from 5% to 5%. The berberine group dropped from 5% to 5%. The same, identical reduction from a yellow root that had been sitting in temple gardens in China for 2,000 years. That study has been cited over 1,000 times. It's been replicated. Multiple meta-analyses have confirmed the finding. Berberine in standard doses produces A1C reductions comparable to metformin in patients with type 2 diabetes. And yet, and this is the part Eleanor's granddaughter was trying to explain to her over the phone, your doctor still won't bring it up. Quick thing, while we're on the subject, drop your most recent A1C number in the comments. I read every single one. I'm trying to get a picture of where this audience is starting from. Just the number. No story needed unless you want to tell it. All right. Now we have to talk about the mechanism, because if you don't understand what berberine is doing inside your body, you can't use it correctly. And you can't tell the difference between a good supplement and a bad one. Berberine works in 3 places: your cells, your liver, and your gut. Let's start with the cells. There's a switch inside every cell in your body. It's called AMPK. The full name is adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase. Don't worry about the name. Here's what AMPK does. Think of AMPK as the night shift manager at a factory. The day shift manager, a different enzyme called mTOR, keeps the factory running, building things, storing things, growing things. But when the day shift ends and the lights go down, the night shift manager comes in. And her job is the opposite. Clean up, conserve, pull supplies in for tomorrow. When AMPK activates inside your cells, 3 things happen. 1, your cells pull glucose out of your bloodstream, not slowly, aggressively. 2, your cells start burning stored fat for fuel instead of asking for more glucose. 3, your liver slows down its own glucose production because the night shift manager just told it, we have enough. Stop manufacturing. That's how metformin works. Metformin activates AMPK. That's how berberine works. Berberine activates AMPK. Same final switch, different doors to get there. But here's where berberine starts to do something metformin can't. Mechanism number 2, the liver. Your liver between roughly 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock every night manufactures glucose and dumps it into your bloodstream. This is normal. Your body needs a baseline supply while you sleep. But that window, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, it isn't just when your liver is busy. It's also the window when most strokes hit seniors. It's when sudden cardiac events spike. It's when your blood pressure climbs while you have no idea it's climbing. Your body is at its most vulnerable in those overnight hours, and your liver dumping glucose is one of the reasons. After 15 to 20 years of insulin resistance, your liver doesn't know when to stop. It overproduces constantly, like a bakery that doesn't know its hours. The doors are supposed to close at midnight, but the bakers keep baking all night long. Loaf after loaf dumped onto the front counter. By the time you wake up, your blood sugar reads 130, 140, sometimes 160, and you haven't eaten a thing. This is why your fasting glucose has been creeping up for years, even though you swear you're eating less than you used to. Berberine inhibits an enzyme in your liver called glucose 6-phosphatase. That's the enzyme responsible for the final step of glucose manufacturing. When that enzyme gets blocked, the bakery stops baking. The overnight dump slows. Your fasting glucose drops. A 2015 meta-analysis in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology, reviewing 14 separate clinical trials totaling over 1,000 patients, confirmed that berberine reduces fasting glucose by an average of 5 to 1 millimoles per liter. That's roughly 10 to 20 milligrams per deciliter from a single supplement with no prescription. But the third mechanism is the one that surprises most people. Mechanism number 3, your gut snorts. Inside your intestine, you have something called the gut microbiome. Trillions of bacteria, some good, some bad. The balance between them determines an enormous amount about your blood sugar control, insulin sensitivity, inflammation, even your appetite. When you have type 2 diabetes, your microbiome shifts. The bacteria associated with metabolic health get crowded out. The bacteria associated with inflammation and insulin resistance start to dominate. Berberine, for reasons researchers are still working out, selectively kills the inflammatory bacteria while allowing the metabolic health bacteria to flourish. It is, and I want you to hear this carefully, a gut antibiotic that happens to be specific to the bacteria that are making your diabetes worse. And what nature has been providing in that yellow root for 2,000 years is exactly this combination of three mechanisms: AMPK activation, liver suppression, microbiome remodeling, working at the same time in one cheap compound. Now, before we get to how to actually take it, I want to spend a minute on the 5 other things berberine does that metformin doesn't. Number 1, berberine lowers triglycerides. A 2016 review in the journal Advances in Experimental Medicine and Biology across multiple studies found berberine reduced triglyceride levels by an average of 23 to 40% in patients with metabolic syndrome. Metformin doesn't do this. If your doctor puts you on metformin and also a statin, she's targeting 2 different problems with 2 different drugs. Berberine, by activating AMPK in liver tissue, hits both. Number 2, berberine lowers LDL cholesterol. The same review showed LDL reductions in the range of 10 to 20% in patients taking berberine consistently for 3 to 6 months, comparable to a low-dose statin, without the muscle pain, without the cytochrome interactions, without the $800 a month. And here's why this matters more than the number on your annual blood panel. Triglycerides and LDL aren't abstract markers. They are the 2 things that determine whether the next stroke, the next heart attack finds you in your sleep or doesn't. After 70, the difference between a clean artery and a half-blocked one is the difference between waking up tomorrow and not waking up tomorrow. Berberine reduces both numbers. That's not a blood sugar benefit. That's something else entirely. Number 3, berberine reduces inflammation. Specifically, it lowers C-reactive protein. That's the inflammation marker your doctor probably checks on your annual blood panel. If your CRP has been creeping up, if you've been getting that vague note on your blood work that says mild systemic inflammation, this is one of the reasons. And it's one of the reasons your insulin resistance keeps getting worse year after year, even when your diet hasn't changed. Number 4, berberine appears to help with weight loss in patients with type 2 diabetes. Modest, not dramatic, about 5 pounds over 12 weeks in the average study, but it's real. Documented. Metformin in some patients causes weight loss. In others, weight gain. Berberine is more consistent. Number 5, and this one is the one I find most interesting. A study published in 2020 in the journal Frontiers in Pharmacology showed that berberine reduces something called polyol pathway activity in nerve tissue. Polyol pathway activity is one of the main mechanisms behind diabetic neuropathy. The numbness that wakes you up at 3 a.m., the burning that runs from your toes up to your shins, tingling so persistent you can't tell anymore if you stepped on something or if your nerves are just firing on their own. The kind of nerve damage that makes you afraid to walk barefoot in your own kitchen. So many of you have been told there's nothing to do about it. There may in fact be something to do about it. That's the 5. Triglycerides, cholesterol, inflammation, weight, neuropathy, none of which metformin meaningfully addresses on its own. So now we get to the question that's been sitting in the back of your mind since I named this plant. If it's this good, why won't your doctor recommend it? Before I answer that question, I want to acknowledge something I see in the comments under every video I make. A lot of you watching this are on 5, 6, 7 medications. Metformin, a statin, a blood pressure pill, maybe an antidepressant from when your spouse died, maybe a sleep aid you started during the pandemic and never stopped. And you can't tell anymore which one is making you dizzy, which one is making you tired, which one is making your hands shake when you try to button your shirt in the morning. You're not crazy. That's called polypharmacy. And the more pills stack on top of each other, the harder it gets for you, for your doctor, for anyone to know which one is actually working and which one is working against the others. Berberine doesn't fix that. But used correctly, it's one of the few tools that lets your doctor have a conversation about reducing one of the pills in that stack, not adding another. Reducing, which brings me back to the question. If berberine works this well, why won't your doctor recommend it? The easy answer, the one I see on the internet constantly, is that pharma is hiding it from you, that doctors are paid to push pills, that the system is corrupt. I don't believe that. I worked in that system for over 30 years. I'm not going to sit here and tell you my colleagues were corrupt. Most of them were exhausted. Most of them were doing their best with what they were trained on. But here's what I will say. There's a phrase that economists use. It's called the missing market. A missing market is when something valuable exists and demand exists, but the structure of the economy doesn't allow it to be priced and traded efficiently. Berberine is a missing market. You can't patent it. It's been in continuous use for 2,000 years. There's no exclusivity. There's no 20-year window where one company gets all the revenue, which means no company will ever spend the $400 to $800 million it costs to run a phase 3 clinical trial that would give it FDA approval. No phase 3 trial. no FDA approval, no place in the standard of care, no mention in medical school, no prescription pad familiarity, no mention in your doctor's office. And this is the part I want you to sit with. Generic metformin costs about $4 a month at Walmart. Berberine as a supplement runs about $15 to $25 a month at CVS or Costco. So cost isn't the reason your doctor recommends metformin instead. Metformin is actually cheaper. The reason is that one of them is on the prescription menu and the other isn't. That's it. That's the whole story. Nobody's hiding anything. The information just lives in a part of the system your doctor doesn't have a flashlight pointed at, and so it stays in the dark. This isn't anti-medicine. I want to be clear about that. I'm not telling you to throw out your metformin. I'm not telling you to stop seeing your endocrinologist. I'm not telling you any of that. What I'm telling you is there's another tool. It's been sitting on the shelf. It works through a similar mechanism with some advantages metformin doesn't have, and depending on where you are in your journey and what your doctor agrees to, it may belong in your protocol. For some of you, it may belong alongside your medication. For others, and this is the conversation Eleanor and her doctor had at her 90-day follow-up, it may mean reducing what you're currently on. And for those of you watching this, for your father, your mother, your spouse, for those of you who are caregivers, this is the kind of information your loved one's doctor may not bring up, but you can. You can ask. And speaking of the conversation that happens at 2 a.m., when your liver is dumping glucose and you have no idea, that overnight pattern is exactly what the midnight insulin trap walks you through. How to recognize it, how to disrupt it, how to use the same hours that are working against you to start working for you. The link's in the description if you'd like to take a closer look. All right, practical. How do you actually take this? Standard research dose, the one used in every clinical trial we've talked about today, is 500 milligrams of berberine HCl. That's the salt form hydrochloride 3 times a day before meals. Total daily dose, 1,500 milligrams. 500 3 times before meals. Why before meals? Because berberine has a short half-life. It works in your gut and your bloodstream for about 4 to 6 hours. Then it clears. So you take it before each major eating event when your body's about to be exposed to glucose, and it's there to do its job in real time. Now, 3 protocols, because not everyone's situation is the same. Protocol 1, the maintenance protocol. For someone with prediabetes or early-stage type 2 diabetes whose A1C is between 5, 7, and 7. You're not on insulin. You may or may not be on metformin. Your numbers are creeping up and you want to interrupt the trajectory. 500 milligrams of berberine 20 to 30 minutes before breakfast. 500 milligrams 20 to 30 minutes before dinner. That's it. 2 doses a day. You can build up to 3 doses if you tolerate it well. Protocol 2, the meal protocol. For someone whose post-meal blood sugar spikes are the main problem, you wake up okay, but 2 hours after dinner, your reading is 220 or 240. 500 milligrams 15 to 20 minutes before each major meal. 3 times daily. Before breakfast, before lunch, before dinner. This is the standard research protocol. This is what Eleanor used. Protocol 3, the overnight protocol. For someone whose fasting glucose is the issue, you eat well during the day. Your numbers are okay until you go to sleep. You wake up at 6 a.m. and your glucose reads 140, 500 milligrams 20 minutes before dinner. Another 500 milligrams right before bed with a small piece of healthy fat, a few almonds, a spoonful of natural peanut butter. The fat slows the absorption and extends the berberine's working window through the overnight liver dumping hours.